Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're doing my top 10 manhwa that I think had the best year in 2023. This is not going to be the same ranking as my favorite manhwa right now, but these are manhwas that killed it in 2023 with amazing arcs that just delivered consistently. You're going to see some differences in this one with what my typical lists look like because some of my favorite manhwa just did not deliver this year. Starting off with a couple of honorable mentions, I do want to still give a highlight to some of these because I still think they were somewhat strong, but just not as interesting as they used to be. Damn Reincarnation consistently is a good manhwa, but it's a lot of building right now, and there isn't a lot of plot slash action slash discoveries taking place at a fast enough pace to keep people really engaged with it. I think it's amazing what they're building overall, but I do think that it wasn't its best year in 2023. Nanomachine is another one that has dropped off hard ever since the end of the arc where he kind of achieved his objective and it's kind of expanded into the wider world. Nanomachine has not been able to quite land its footing in the way that we were kind of hoping. That being said, I still think it's in an interesting place right now, but there was some stuff downright that I hated that happened this year with the manhwa, particularly around harems and things like that, that if you know me, if you follow my content at all, you know I'm big against those type of content. Just don't enjoy them at all. More power to you if you do, but it didn't work for me this year. And lastly was Kill the Hero. I think it's worth an honorable mention. It had its ending this year, and I will give special props to the author of that manhwa, who after announcing its end came back and actually did more chapters to kind of wrap things up in the story that were not completed previously. I've never seen an author do this, and it was announced to be finished completely, and these chapters just dropped. Maybe it's just I wasn't paying attention to things. I found it was great. I don't think they are perfect chapters, but I actually do think they give a good sense of finality to the series, and I do wish a lot of other series had this. That being said, I still think it ended a bit with a whimper, so it doesn't quite make the top 10 list of the year. At number 10, we have Absolute Sword Sense. From the same creator as Nanomachine, Absolute Sword Sense has kept me consistently interested throughout the series so far. Had a rocky start in 2022 with a hiatus due to illness right away from the author, but 2023 was a really strong year for the series with some solid arcs of a main character kind of finding his footing in a completely new situation, but still being able to leverage some of his information from his past life to kind of achieve new things. Number 9 breaks my heart with Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. So this list, like I said, is not going to be what you expect from me. Normally Omniscient, and it remains one of my favorite manhwa of all time right now. This year just wasn't the year. And everyone that I know that reads the light novel kind of told me that this arc, the Pygmy arc of Omniscient, is its weakest arc overall. That being said, don't know if that's entirely true. I'm not a light novelist, but I will say Omniscient Reader just did not do it for me this year. I kept piling up chapters. Before I was devouring them 1 week at a time, but this year I was piling them up and catching up, and it just wasn't that exciting, that interesting, because the whole plot line just wasn't that engaging to me. That being said, I still think it's going to go down as one of the great manhwa of all time, and I would love for it to eventually get an anime adaptation that's worth its salt because it's such a crazy world to develop. But that being said, I don't think it deserves to be any higher than number 9. Number 8, if the last one broke my heart, this one destroys my soul, is Legend of the Northern Blade. Oh my god, I can't believe I'm putting it here. So I'm looking at what manhwa had a great year this year, and it's not to say the stuff that happened wasn't amazingly drawn, but the emotion of it just doesn't hit for me the way it did before the time jump. That time skip kind of jumped us into action, and I should be super happy about that, but a lot of the soul of what the series is feels like it was left in before the time jump. And we used to spend several chapters between fights before, and now it's kind of a war arc, if you will, but it feels like we're running towards the ending. It gets this feeling of an author that really knew where they were going in a long storyline in the beginning, and now it feels like, all right, we're gonna kill off a ton of characters really quickly so that we can get to the final fights right away. And I I don't like it. I don't like it because I think this is a masterpiece beyond masterpieces, but this year did not do it for me. And I'm curious on your thoughts of Legend of Northern Blade. I know a lot of you are fans of the series. Did it live up for you this year, or did it really fall flat like it did for me? Number 7, we have Duke Pendragon. Never thought I'd be putting these series ahead of Legend of Northern Blade, but Duke Pendragon had some great moments this year. It had one of these moments when, and I won't spoil too much, but there's a moment where the main character comes to grips with his reality and kind of the life that he left behind and what the world actually is now. He has to kind of make peace with that. And I found it was brilliantly done and just really made you engage with the characters. And for these medieval fantasy stories with dragons, these things could be done a million times. So to see some type of interesting storytelling with a protagonist that's not just Gary Stu, that's like perfect in every way, but is dealing with some stuff, felt good. He's still a little bit too perfect to my liking, but that being said, I think it's been really enjoyable, and it does feel like there's stakes in this world. There's also been citycraft / kingdomcraft stuff going on there, which I found really interesting. Number 6 is Reaper of the Drifting Moon. Reaper of the Drifting Moon saw the end of its first arc near the beginning of the year, and it started its second arc in the second half of the year. It ended it off with this crazy fight with visuals that are beyond belief, and while I won't say it was deeply filled with storytelling, there was so much vengeance and hate in that revenge that I really was questioning what they would be able to do for a season 2. Honestly, it was a big hiatus between season 1 and season 2, and when season 2 started up, it's definitely been a slow start. I don't dislike it though. I do find in this particular case, taking the character a little bit away from his purely vengeance path has been interesting to see some stuff going on around him and things in the world, people that are stronger than him, and that there's more to it in this world. And there's been some stuff introduced that I think is really interesting, and this manhwa remains one of the ones I jump on every week when it comes out. At number 5, we have Overpowered Sword. If you told me this would make it to the top 10 of any of my lists when I started reading it, I would have said, you're insane, this is the most generic thing I've ever seen. However, this last year saw a really heartfelt, emotional arc for the character, and kind of coming to grips with the things he can and can't do, the characters around him that I found really interesting, and just the relationship building and kind of the build of what we have to move into future seasons with is really good. It does feel like a full end of the quest somewhat at the end of the season. It almost sounded like an end of a series, but it's going to be ongoing. But I will say that this one had an amazing year this year, and I think it's one that I think is slept on a little bit too much. Number 4 is one of my favorites, you know it, but I think it had a crazy year, and that's Infinite Leveling in Murim. And this year saw the story just expand. And if you know me and my comments on Nanomachine, on even Chronicles of Heavenly Demon, when stories expand from being more like a school-based thing into like a worldcraft thing, it's questionable. I never quite know how it's going to land. But it really worked for me in Infinite Leveling Murim. They broke people into different teams, sent them off on different quests, and they just kind of wrapped up their quest just now. And the skill sets of the main character are very unique, and the way he fights is not something I've seen in other series, and I find it really enjoyable to see something a little different. It's maybe a little bit too weird in some ways, but this year they introduced the mystical, like a giant spider, human spider thingy. They introduced a character so powerful that no one in the main characters can deal with him, and every time they meet him, characters have perished. Like, characters we like that are good guys in the story have lost their lives, and all of a sudden it's becoming that, hey, not everyone is safe in this series. You know, the core is pretty safe for a while, but like there is a feeling of stakes when you're against these characters. Also some metaphysical stuff within like this lost world where they spend like infinite time. Not crazy about that stuff, where he learned some of the skills related to his special skill sets. But all that being said, pretty cool. I don't like, again, that there's a bit of a harem element kind of being introduced. Multiple girls are interested in the main character. That being said, it's not over the top, so I don't mind it too much. So that being said, deserves to be on the list, and if you're not reading it, I think you're missing out. I know its art style is not for everyone, and not everyone loves Muriam stuff, but I'm a fan forever. At number 3, this is the year of Great Mage Returns. Like, Great Mage Returns had a crazy year fighting against some of the biggest monsters, the apocalypses, and against the demons, Asura in the demon world, and kind of a fight against Lord, sort of. Like, this was really the year of Great Mage Returns, of having its big fights and going. And I do think in the end it's going to be a good series. I don't think Great Mage will quite stand the test of time as an overarching top 5 series of all time. I don't think the storytelling's been strong enough, but I do think as this year in isolation, I think it's been a really good one. But I will also say that it hasn't been a great year in manhwa for a lot of series. They haven't quite landed well this year in comparison to others. There's a few exceptions to that, obviously, with some more on this list. But I will say Great Mage had a crazy year, and I was always excited to read every single chapter coming out. Number 2 is Lookism. Oh yeah, Lookism. I can't stand Lookism, is what I said for the longest of times. Actually, the top 2, I had the same kind of storytelling for it. Just didn't work with me. Like, these stories were just kind of repetitive and like bullying, and just I got annoyed with them. But I read through Lookism this year, finally caught up, and just this year's chapters saw some of the greatest fights and the greatest character moments I saw of the year. Second best to the first, but I will say Lookism is not for everyone, and I don't think there's anything wrong with someone being like, hey, I really didn't jive with Lookism. Like, either the art style didn't work for me because it's a little weird, or on the flip side, I found the bullying way too over the top. The character relationships are too much. Like, there's a lot of stuff. There's a huge ensemble cast of this series as well that might not be for everyone, but I will say masterclass in storytelling and effective character building, and the character arcs are always impressive for where our main character is getting to. I got to go through the whole series this year, so I got to see the character arc of the protagonist as he's gotten more brave, more empowered, and the people around him have changed over time. It's been a great quest and a great adventure, but a great year. At number 1, obviously, it's Elisede. Holy crap, was it a year for Elisede. This year saw some of the best fights in the series, and saw flexing of the most powerful characters we've encountered so far. Actually, multiple of them. But our protagonist is no longer some sheepish, like, avoiding the fight kind of character. He's run right into the action, gonna take the invitation over to the enemy's base, and he's gonna face off against as many people as he has to honor who his mentor and teacher is. And wow, what a crazy year. What a crazy visual art style for this series this year. The lightning, the speed, everything has worked so well. I think it's a phenomenal series. If you haven't caught up to Elisede, now's your time to do so. We're in a transition period to the next kind of arc, if you will, and I think it's a great time to catch up if you're not. Other than that, guys, that's my top 10 of the year. Definitely not my typical one. I'm curious on your thoughts of it. What's your top 10 favorite manhwa that you think killed it this year specifically? Not your favorite of all time. It's a different list for that. But what are your best this year? With that, like and subscribe to the channel, and thanks again for watching.